Hi, this is Mike from Challenge Island, Oakland County East, back with our Steamtastic Friday. We're in the middle of our sports series right now on Challenge Island, and as we thought about it, there's a lot of ways that sports and art connect with each other. So we're going to kind of cut across a bunch of different ways those two things go together. So next time you're thinking about sports and art, maybe you can figure out some fun ways to combine those together. So today we'll talk about sports as art. Some sports can be art in themselves. We'll talk about art as sports. In fact, art was a sport and is a sport in many ways. Art can represent sports. We'll show you an example of that. Art happens during sports events. We'll show you one cool example of that coming up real soon here. And finally, athletes can create art as well. So sports and art can come together in that way too. So let's take a quick look at each of those. First, when it comes to sports as art, most sports, when you think about it, it's all about scoring more points, running faster than the rest of the people, things like that. But there's other sports where art and doing things with a good technique is very important and helps you to win and do very well also. So just a couple examples, as you can see here, are diving and also gymnastics. So when the judges scored sports like that, of course you need to accomplish what you're doing, the somersaults on the vault. You need to do the triple somersault as you're coming off the diving board, but they're also looking for technique and how it looks when you do that. So for example, when you dive, it's important to keep your feet together. It's important to make a small splash as you go into the pool. In gymnastics, as you can see in our example on the vault, keeping your legs straight apart, keeping your knees straight when you land, making sure you can land straight up and not stumble. So all those kinds of things are artistic because you look at them, but they'll help you be successful at sports as well. Now let's flip that the other way around. Art has been sports and has actually been part of the Olympics. Maybe you hadn't heard that before. So actually in the early stages of the modern Olympics, from about 1912 to 1948, during some of those different Olympics, art was actually part of the competition. So here you can see just some of the examples of the different kinds of art that qualified for the Olympics. So architecture would sometimes be that. For example, here's an Olympic stadium that got to win an Olympic gold medal. Literature, so writing a story about sports could count. Composing music related to a sports event. Also painting, something that had to do with sports. And even sculpture. So here you can see an example of some Olympic judges looking at a sculpture to decide which one was going to win the gold medal. So all the events in the Olympics related to art back in those days required that it was inspired by sports, but you could use all those different types of art to share how much the artist was showing about that. All right, let's go on to the next one. All right, the next one we wanted to talk about is the many ways art can represent sport. So the most common way we see that is in logos. So there can be logos for entire sports like Major League Baseball, the NBA, and also sports are also logos for a lot of different teams as well. So here you can see some examples of those. So when it comes to doing a logo, that's a very fun type of art to make. So the idea with a logo is to come up with a very simple design, maybe come up with, it can have some letters in it, it can have a picture in it, but it needs to be really bold and really colorful and really show people what it is you're talking about. So maybe that's something you could try sometimes. Maybe make a logo for your soccer team or for your little league team. So that can be a lot of fun to combine art and sports. Next example is art during sports. So if you've ever been to a baseball game, sometimes they'll do fireworks at the end. Sometimes people wear special costumes or wear special paint. So they decorate themselves when they go to the sports game. One very special example coming up is the opening of the Olympics. So on February 4th, the next Olympics are starting in Beijing, and usually that is one of the greatest examples of art and sports. They usually do a very cool ceremony with music, with fireworks, all kinds of dancers, so lots of things go on during those opening ceremonies. So I encourage you to check that out if you're looking for a neat example of art during a sports event. And finally, artists get involved in art a lot as well. So here's just a couple examples of athletes you may recognize and the art that they create. So for example, Serena Williams, as you can see on the bottom here, she's actually studied art in Paris and has now created some paintings that she's starting to share with people. Usain Bolt, who's a very famous track athlete, is also a famous photographer. And finally, Larry Johnson, who plays football, also paints and does art related to his sport of football. So those are just some of the many ways that art and sports can combine together. So if you enjoy sports, figure out some ways that you can put some art into that and make it even more exciting. All right, with that, thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.